In this clip, we're going to take a look at the boss interface over here. So we've already taken a look at how we can add the geometry and how we can throw our first solver onto it. We've used this spectral wave solver, which you can see is right there. But we haven't really talked about what most of the buttons here in the interface do. Now this area over here, the wave influences, we're not going to cover this part just yet. We'll go into that in the next module when we actually have something we can use here. For right now, let's take a look at this area over here. Now we do know that this button right here created our spectral wave solver, and we also know that this one creates the wave solver, the dynamic one. So there's at least an understanding of what those do. Now this one over here is probably fairly obvious. The trash can will delete whatever is selected. So if I grab this, hit the trash can, it deletes it, and you can of course use Control to select multiples if you do in fact have multiple solvers over here. Now notice when I deleted that, my geometry disappeared. It's not actually gone. What happens is when we create a boss ocean, it actually hides the original geometry. You could see it's right there. I can just bring that back, click that again, and you could see we are good to go again. And you'll notice that the geometry that's created when we do add a solver is actually now called the boss output. So you can think of this as our input geometry, the original that's now hidden, and the boss output is the final simmed output geometry. We'll go ahead and close that back over there. So what do these buttons over here do on this spectral wave solver that we did create? Well, they're not going to really seem to do very much just yet. If I turn on this one, nothing seems to happen, and this one here shuts off the effect. Well, this one does just that. You could see this is whether this effect is enabled or disabled. However, the reason we don't see an effect on this one is because this is the solo button, meaning that it's just soloing this effect. However, since it's the only effect we currently have in here, again, we don't see an effect. So let's go ahead and add a second one. I'm going to add this other spectral wave. Now, just so this looks a little bit different, I'm going to come over here to its options, and we're going to discuss all of these options in detail later. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of quick changes. I'm going to go ahead and change my wave height to maybe 1.3. And I'd also like to, let's see, come down here. I'm actually looking for my seed settings. I'm not actually seeing them. I'm going to hit Control A to bring up my attribute editor. There it is. I'm just change that to maybe 1500. So it just gives me a random place. So it's not in the identical place as this one here. And what I mean by place is a point in the animation. Okay, so I now have two solvers on here. And you can see the motion looks a little more complex. Now actually going through all of those options and how these solvers stack together, that's again for future modules. For right now, we're just taking a look at how we can now use this to preview whatever we specifically want to see. If I want to see this second solver only, I can go ahead and click its solo button. And you can see the solo button will automatically shut off this other layer. If I even had a third one in here, you can see if that solo button is on, it shuts off everything. Turn it back off, all three are now on. So you can see that's a quick way to just preview any one layer that you have in here or any one solver. And you could of course also do this just with the on and off switches here, but once you get quite a few of them, it's really quick and easy just to use this solo button. So that explains these buttons here. However, what does this one here do, this little diskette icon? Now if I click that, again, you're not going to really see much happen. You will notice something shifted here. What these are for is whether our caches are enabled or not. Basically, we can cache out these simulations, these results, as EXR sequences. And when this is red, the little diskette icon, that means it's not using cache. Whenever it's green, it is using the cache. However, since I have no caches right now, when I turn them all on, you see I effectively get no simulation. Now, my output bar is a bit out of view in this recording, but you'll see a little yellow warning pop up there that basically tells you there is no cache. Now, how do you create a cache? Well, we're going to cover that in a future clip, coming up very soon though. However, it's actually quite easy. You'll notice there's actually a button right here for caching and right here for deleting your cache. So that pretty much rounds out the rest of our buttons there as well. Now, if we head over to the right-hand side over here, you'll see we kind of have some overall tools. We have cache everything at once, so I don't have to select individual ones to cache. I can also disable all caches at once, so that'll shut them all off, obviously. Pretty easy. We have domain replacement, which is a fancy way of saying we're going to switch out the geometry that's used. We'll have a clip on that coming up soon. And then we have set start frame for all. You'll notice that when I go to frame 1, I currently have nothing. That's because by default, every one of these layers are set to start at frame 2. What I can do is go here to frame 1, hit set start frame for all, and now every one of these will actually begin at frame 1. Alternatively, I could go to frame 30, hit set start frame for all, and you'll notice now there's nothing until we hit frame 30. You can also do this individually within the options for each one of these layers. Again, I'll go back to frame 1 for now, hit set start frame for all. Now we have a few other options down here. There is cache continuously. Now there's no reason for us to do this right now. However, you will see why we may want this later, but what this does is whenever I'm playing my simulation, regardless if I've clicked it to cache or not, it's always caching, even if no changes have been made. Anytime I'm playing, it's continuously going to be caching. This next option over here is called Auto Select Nodes. So what this does is if I select one of these solvers, it automatically selects it for me in the scene as well. You can see there's boss spectral wave 3, spectral wave 2. If this is shut off, you can see that doesn't update. In fact, if I select nothing and grab these, nothing will appear there. So this can be pretty handy. Use single sim domain and reuse geo properties is a simple way of saying that anytime I add new solvers, they're going onto this existing piece of geometry. It's not starting a second boss system. You would shut these off if you do have separate boss systems that you need out here. And the last one is called auto cleanup. Basically, any extra nodes that might appear that are created when we either create boss or delete boss will be auto cleaned up for us. So it's typically nice to leave that on unless you're an expert user that for whatever reason needs those nodes. However, that's a bit outside the scope of this course. So that's a quick look at least the basic options here in our boss editor.